Days after, maybe even hours after Penn State Wrestling won its latest national championship, the team is already hard at work trying to secure the next one. Recruiting, transfer portal, the latest roster churn here on the Penn State Wrestling Show. I'm Thomas Rankar, the guy who has been following it all along, doing a great job and providing you with all the information you need through the championship and now into portal and recruiting season is Greg Pickle, our wrestling reporter for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. That's the place to go to find all of his stuff. He's been doing an amazing job. March was Greg's month where he was dominating a lot of this stuff and giving you all the things you need to know. We're going to continue that here in April. So, Greg, welcome to the show. Give us the overview. I know I just kind of gave the outline of what's going to happen on the show today, what we're talking about, but can you give us your high-level view of how Penn State has pivoted to this latest phase in the calendar?
Yeah, April is roster construction season, T. Frank. So no different than football, no different than basketball. Once a season ends, things quickly start happening in terms of setting up the next season. So where wrestling's a little bit different, and to some degree it's the same as basketball, but not quite like football, is that once the national championship's over, the portal has already been open. And so for basketball, I can't remember exactly when the portal opened, but obviously, if you're watching this on April 2nd or sometime later, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that if you're depending on when you're watching this, the Final Four may not have happened yet in college basketball. In college wrestling, the portal opened prior to the national championships a couple weeks ago in Philadelphia. So some of this stuff is happening now because the season is over, but it's been in the works for a little while. And we have some news on the recruiting front that is not related to the portal, but certainly for Penn State and its fans, the Nittany Lions are busy and maybe busier than normal at this time of year. There's one thing, too, we'll get into at the end of the show that actually just popped up as we hit record. So some news potentially about next year's schedule, but I'm pretty sure you all know when I start talking about it what the answer is going to be. But stick around to the end and we'll talk about that.
Okay, you don't want to get that in now? You want to talk about that at the end?
Correct.
Okay, all right, great. So let's get into the first thing here that we wanted to talk about before that news broke, which is Penn State on the recruiting trail has done some good work of flipping guys for 2026. Tell us about Jaden James, Virginia Tech recruit originally. What is your understanding of what he brings to the roster, and how big of a win is this for Penn State's future recruiting efforts in 2026?
Yeah, so for those of you who are regular listeners to the show, we appreciate you, and thanks to anyone tuning in for the first time. But if it was a normal week, we would have had the show on Wednesday and covered this last week based on the fact that it happened a week ago Tuesday. But when you have Ono committing to Penn State and you're coming off of a fourth straight national title for the Nittany Lions and setting some records and things like that along the way, we went on Monday last week. We're back to our Wednesday usual routine, but that meant we missed Jaden James's commitment. So he is the NJ.com Wrestler of the Year, reigning 150-pound champ in New Jersey. Like you said, T. Frank was previously committed to Virginia Tech as a junior, visited some other schools, and I think, maybe he made a decision. He obviously made a decision and liked what was available to him at Virginia Tech, but it took some more time and reconsidered everything and decided to flip to Penn State. Caught up with his coach not too long ago. We'll have that at some point over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, so always check us out there for the written side of things. But he's a kid that continues to grow, continues to thrive. I'll be interested to see what he does this offseason, and ultimately get ready for a senior year that should propel him, as many have in his shoes before him, into a strong first year at Penn State. So a good get, projects in the upper weights. Like I said,
what is that? Can I just ask you, what does that mean generally to you when you say that? Like, what is the weight range that you think he can wrestle at, and how does that project?
Yeah.
I understand it's 2026, so it's a long ways away in terms of like what Penn State will need, but how much flexibility does he have in the upper weights, and what would you think he might land at to start?
On paper, he projects as a guy who will compete for Levi Haynes' vacated 174-pound spot, assuming Levi Haynes does not use the redshirt year available to him in 2025-2026 and instead finishes his eligibility clock by competing as a senior at 174 pounds for Penn State this winter. As we all know, and as we will talk about on the transfer portal front here in just a bit, things can be up in the air on that front. But to me, 150 pounds now, he's kind of climbed the weights ladder throughout his career. New Jersey weights are a little bit different than some other states and the NCAA. But all told, I think Matt Scouts has him at number 4 in its 2026 junior rankings. one of the top guys pound for pound in the country, and they project him to go to 174, and I think that makes sense. Is it possible maybe 165 is a spot he finds himself starting at when he gets to Penn State? Sure. 184, sure. Just depends how long, there's plenty of time left for him to continue growing and filling out and things like that. So the key is, as it always is with Penn State, is you get the most talented guys who you want in the boat, and then you figure out how you're going to arrange the boat later. And that's what Penn State was able to do here by flipping Jaden James. Kid's great. If you go check out his highlights, they're on social media, on YouTube, stuff like that. Really talented wrestler. Again, looking forward to sharing with everybody, I should say, what his coach had to say about him at some point here soon over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But a good get for the Nittany Lions. Second class of 2026 commit. He joins Johnstown Bishop McCourt, third place finisher at the PWI States this year, Sam Herring in the Lions class of 2026.
Gotcha. So, of course, that's for the future. A lot of things happening. You mentioned Ono as a class of 2025 commit, but the transfer portal bringing in some immediate reinforcements as well. So the portal closes May 2nd, but what have they been able to do in the interim to get guys on the roster? And was this a surprise move to you?
Yeah, so number one, fascinating how long the wrestling portal's open. It opens mid-March until the first week of May. It's open until May 2nd, which
I read that as April, so I was about to say closes today if you're watching this when it comes out, but no, it's a month from now. That's a very long portal window.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about why that is the case, and I need to go back through and do some digging and see if this portal window might be extended due to the upcoming House NCAA settlement proposal approval deal. That's April 7th, potentially in a courtroom somewhere, I think in the West Coast. But anyway, that's going to put roster caps in place for sports across college athletics, wrestling being one of them. So is this window extended because of that, or is this the normal spring window? I wish I knew. I'll do more prep work next time before the show. But at this point, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a long portal window is the basis of my story here. But and it may just be 45 days, which is sort of what was standard prior to football chopping its up. Anyway, Penn State gets Rocco Welsh out of the portal, and the former Ohio State wrestler, PA native, was at KD Training Center previously with a lot of guys who have Penn State connections, including its newest class of 2026 commit we just talked about, but was a 2024 NCAA finalist, finished second to Carter Starachi at 174 pounds, who won his fourth and eventually 5 record-setting national championships then. For whatever reason, Welsh ends up redshirting last year, goes unattached, wins a number of open tournaments, trains all year after, again, losing to Carter at 174, trains all year to go up to 184, and that's where he's going to come in and compete for Penn State, which, again, I think when this first happened, there was some talk of, okay, well, is he going to go back to 74? Could Haynes take a red shirt? That's what I was alluding to a moment ago. But to me, it's now, unless Haynes needs to go up again, which I don't know if that's the case, and if it does, that really throws a wrench into things with this lineup conversation. But working under the current premise that he's at 174 next winter, it sets up a battle between Rocco Welsh and Penn State redshirt freshman Zach Ryder for that 184-pound job. So we'll see how all that shakes out. Welsh is going to compete a little bit later, I believe, at the U.S. Open and on the freestyle scene. We'll see where Zach Ryder competes at in that realm here in a little bit. Now, U.S. Open's later this month. It corresponds with Blue White Weekend at the end of April. So more info to come on that front then, which will also keep the wrestling show going here on the BWI YouTube channel. But, yeah, good get for Penn State. Didn't see it coming, but, he seems to want to get in this room and let the chips fall where they may. And I think on the the Boschmania podcast, basically the moral of the interview was, and you can check that out over on his YouTube channel, but the takeaway was, if I can't beat the best guys, then I'm not reaching my full potential, so I'm going to go to Penn State to wrestle them. And however it works out, it works out.
So just a little bit more here, and I think that answers the question of wanting to be in the room with the best to try and beat the best, and then we've talked about this more than once, that sometimes the best competition that a guy will face if you're on the Penn State wrestling team is in your own training room.
Right.
Does this do anything with Zach Ryder? Because I know fans were very excited penciling him in as a starter, in the long term once he got to campus.
Right.
This feels like a major battle. So I guess how do
Yeah.
you view the situation there beyond that? Just if it's going to be a battle, what does this do to kind of the projection of the long term at that position?
Yeah, I mean, it just adds another layer of intrigue to an off season that was already going to have some. Once you had Ono come over and you tried to figure out what was going to go on with 133 and 141, with Bo Bartlett moving on, that was what we were focused on last week at this time, and now this week at this time, we are focused on 184, where it looked to be Zack Ryder's job. But now you just go back to the whole upper weight conversation. Messenbrink 65, right? He will go for he will be the Hodge Trophy favorite, which we'll get into that whole conversation for this year in a moment. But, there's a little bit of uncertainty as you go up the Penn State lineup at heavyweight. It's outside of heavyweight, which looks to be Cole Mirasola's job, unless they bring somebody in to take on him, a redshirt freshman. But 97, you have redshirt freshman Connor Mirasola, who's going to have to try and take out second place finisher All-American Josh Barr to start at 197. And now you have redshirt freshman Zack Ryder, who, like Connor Mirasola, everyone assumed that he was just going to have a spot in the lineup in this 2025-2026 season. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. We'll see with Rocco Welsh now.
Is that youth part of the conversation here? Sorry to cut you off, but I mean, you've got a lot of redshirt freshmen that we're talking about there at the, in the upper weights, where Penn State generally hangs its hat on, we're going to dominate this part of the lineup, and then that's kind of the engine that gets them going.
Right.
Do you think that just that youth is a part of it, that it's right in a row too, like at pretty important spots, that they wanted to bring in somebody with a little more experience?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I hate to get too what's the right word here? I hate to try and read Cale Sanderson and Cody Sanderson and Casey Cunningham's mind, because there's been so many instances where you sit there and you really think about it and you think it makes sense in your head, and then you realize how successful these guys are, and that whatever way you're thinking is not the way they're thinking. So I try not to get too far into those weeds, but I don't think there's any doubt it provides competition that didn't really exist before. It provides a guy who has obviously been around the national tournament, the Big Ten tournament, and had success, things like that. So we'll see. Again, it's not the spot I really anticipated Penn State making a move at, but here we are. Again, I shouldn't even probably say this, but portal's still open for another month. There's time for roster changes to happen across the country. We see that going on quite a bit. Speaking of that, I guess this may be a good time to note that Alex Facundo, Gary Steen both went into the portal after the Penn State season ended, both now joining David Taylor's Oklahoma State program. So as of the time we're taping this on Wednesday, those are the only two Nittany Lions to go into the portal and already exit it via picking a school. Was there more to come on that front? We'll see. We'll let you know. But at this moment in time, it's just those two who have found a school and they're going to Oklahoma State. So as for the end of the Welsh conversation, it adds a veteran presence in part of the lineup where, to your point, Penn State has usually had at least one guy there at somewhere between 74 and heavyweight. And I guess that, I don't want to, Josh Barr just finished second at his first national tournament, so he's there.
Right.
But he is not, and he is not as old as, as experienced as some of the guys that we've talked about before, the Starachis and Brooks and even Greg Kirkfleets of the world. So definitely a little bit of a different makeup this year in the works for the Penn State wrestling lineup in those weight classes, but they also brought these guys in for a reason. Those guys came to Penn State for a reason. So did Rocco Welsh. They'll settle it out on the mat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in other sports you can play more than one athlete at a position. It's very hard to do that in wrestling, where you got 10 spots, and it's not like you can, if you don't make it at one, he can't go wrestle at 125. So just an interesting dynamic in the room that obviously competition is what these guys thrive on. So it's not a concern as much as it is an interesting view into how you build that competition and how you try to design your room to create the best possible outcome. Speaking of the best possible outcome, winning a national championship is the primary goal. Secondary to that are the accolades that come along with that. Penn State did not gain the highest individual honor of the Hodge Trophy this year. So just let's have that conversation now. Mitchell Messenbrink, Carter Starachi both had great years, not the Hodge Trophy winner.
Yeah, it's Wyatt Hendrickson of Oklahoma State, who we talked about last week, beat Gable Stevenson in the 285-pound finals with a third period takedown. Hendrickson had some pretty sneaky domination numbers this year, very much in line with some of the stuff Messenbrink was doing, but he was a little bit more pin savvy, or whatever you might want to call it. It gets a little. You got a kind of gray area-ish, I guess you could say, with the heavyweights, because sometimes they just get caught, and you got a 260-pound guy that has you in a position. It's just not much you can do. So,
Yeah.
I know a lot of Penn State fans, and I get it and have a problem with it. I do not. I thought that this was a year where any of the three finalists in any other year could have won the Hodge Trophy, which is college wrestling's version of the Heisman Trophy in football. Messenbrink, unfortunately, when you're talking about two senior guys who both won national titles, even though he won one, it's always been in the case of this award that if there's some older guys that have similar accomplishments to some younger guys, the voters are going to side with the older wrestlers. So, unfortunately, he never really had any chance, as far as I'm concerned, to win this award, despite the very dominating, impressive season he had.
Right. There's no question. It felt like
Right.
there was very little question that he was going to be the guy who stepped on the mat and then won every time he did so.
Right. Yeah, it just felt to me, and again, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or otherwise, but once Hendrickson won Stevenson, he became the monster favorite for the award, which it's crazy, though, because Carter Starachi beats the sitting 184-pound champ in a weight class he bumped up to after winning 4 at 174. It's not a resume award. It's a single-season award. It's crazy you can win 5 national championships and never win the college wrestling version of the Heisman Trophy, but Carter Starachi, despite all of his accomplishments, will never be a Hodge Trophy winner, which is a just incredible thing to think about. But at the end of the day, I don't have any complaints about the decision. Again, and I wouldn't have had him if it was reversed either. I just think that once Hendrickson had that thunderous takedown, that was on the minds of every voter, and that this was his award to lose. So that's where I stand on it.
So what is the information that you have for us that we started the show off teasing, and you I assume you've had a little bit of time to kind of codify your thoughts and give them to us in a coherent manner. So what's going on? The latest news here as we record.
It's never
on Wednesday.
coherent, T. Frank. It's never coherent. So we talked a number of episodes ago about the National Dual Invitational event that Oklahoma State is hosting this upcoming season down in Stillwater. You can go find Cale Sanderson's comments about that here on the YouTube channel, and he, as a long-standing little to no amount of interest in participating in something like this. But the event organizers have come out with the plan for how they're going to field this thing, or how they're going to make up the field, rather, for this thing. And Penn State is one of the teams that automatically qualifies based on how it finished the 2024-2025 season, which should not surprise anyone. Yeah. So the teams that had those auto qualifications, and I just want to get all the info right here, T. Frank. Give me 1 second to pull this web page up quick. Okay, so
while you do that, let me just remind people, if you're here watching the show, well, we got a couple of minutes left on the show, but it's never too late to like the video and subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube. We'll be giving you Penn State wrestling content throughout the rest of the year. We won't be going every week necessarily if there's not something worth talking to you about in terms of news and updates and things like that. We won't be every single week, but we will be every single week where there's something to talk about, and generally be here on Wednesdays throughout the off season. So make sure you subscribe and you're checking back. Wednesdays at 5 p.m. is when the show drops.
Yeah, so we'll see about next week. It kind of just depends what happens between now and then. I think we should have enough to do a show. If you're willing, we will be back on April 16th, because on April 15th, the 12 teams given automatic bids to this dual championship will have to have made their decision to go or not go. So the 12 teams that receive that are Penn State, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio State, Cornell, North Carolina State, Northern Iowa, Illinois, Virginia Tech, and Michigan are the teams that, if they want in, they're in. And they went off of the final NCAA standings for this year. Mm-hmm. If any of those teams decide not to participate, which, again, it's going to shock me if Penn State does, but we'll see. We'll find out at some point. There's the teams 13 through 24, Purdue, Missouri, Lehigh, Little Rock, West Virginia, some of the teams on the list, Maryland. I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of those teams are definitely going to get in because it's a 16-team event, so it's just a matter of how many. They'll random draw for those teams to get in on April 24th. So Like I said, it's going to be at Oklahoma State, November 15th and 16th of this year. Again, I don't think something would have to change for Penn State to go to this thing, but that is going to be known by April 15th, which sets up well for us to talk about it on April 16th, T. Frank.
Perfect.
And so, like I said, we'll see about next week's wrestling show. I just have a weird feeling there'll be something worth talking about. Maybe not, though. Just stay tuned for that. Either way, we'll be back in 2 weeks with more info on that, as it could be. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it could. It will be the first scheduling decision that becomes public for Penn State Wrestling for the 2025-2026 season.
The rest will come out in October, and then
That's right. Yeah.
we'll have that information for you then. That'll do it for today's show. Appreciate everyone being here. As I'll just reiterate, please subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel so we can give you more Penn State football, Penn State wrestling, Penn State basketball, Penn State hockey. Penn State is churning right now. This is the year of Penn State in the postseason. So as all these things happen, women volleyball, wrestling, I can't name all of the sports. There's 31 of them. We got to go.
Hockey. There's more hockey coming up. Yes.
Yeah. We'll be back. We'll be back with more on the Penn State Wrestling Show here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.